Hey Fermin, how you doing, man? Welcome to my LinkedIn Live service to sales vets helping vets. This is my fourth week doing this. It's sponsored by my company Shift Group, which helps athletes and veterans transition from either pro or college athlete or come out of the military into a B2B tech sales job. How you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. Good to see you, Sean. Thanks for having
Great.
me.
Hey, for our audience here, if you don't know Fermin, I've been following him for a while. He's pretty interesting account executive right now, and I get a lot of good content from you and learn. And another cool thing is like we both have twins. I got 8-year-old daughters. They're identical. They turned 9 this weekend. What about you?
Strong. 3.5-year-old boys. They've been homesick all week. Just
That's the age where they get sick, man.
it's gnarly. It's gnarly. Lots of you wake up early, you get your work done, and you do what else you got to do after bedtime and make it happen.
Yeah. Well, hey, I really appreciate you showing up. You hear me? Sorry.
Yeah.
So can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, starting the present, I'm an account executive, work for a company called HiBob, where I sell a modern people management data platform to companies that are mid market to mid enterprise, modern, and very specifically multinational. Been account executive for a couple of years now. Originally, came out of the Marine Corps. I had enlisted in 2002 in the reserves as an artillery guy. Did a tour in Iraq and finished college. Got commissioned, went active duty. Spent a year in Afghanistan, which is actually where my sales journey started. Ended up in Marja. We were part of this program, one of these, kind of not so smart programs where you go in and try to change the economy. And we were cutting deals with opium farmers to burn their crops. And sitting in Churas, it's pretty gnarly, just and ridiculous. Came back, became a captain, got sent to recruiting duty. So I was OPSO XO for recruiting station Portland, which oversaw Oregon, Alaska, Southwest Washington State. Leave active duty, and I want to go into tech sales. This is going to be my future. This is great. And made the mistake a lot of vets do, and instead took the job I felt I was qualified for. I moved to Austin, Texas, building houses as a project manager. 3 years later, or 2.5 years later.
That's what everybody does, huh?
Everybody. And also, I did it way longer than I should because it turns out you can quit. In civilian world, you're like, oh yeah, maybe this isn't what I want to do. I can quit. But 2.5 years later, I had the #1 customer satisfaction rating for any, I don't know anything about construction and political science degree, artillery guy, background in logistics, like, come on. And knew a guy, artillery officer. He was at Palantir, Gabe Skanga, and introduced me to an Air Force vet who's at a real estate tech company called Qualia. That guy, Chris is his name. He gets me the interview with Scott Leese, the SVP of sales. And I interview as an account executive and don't get hired. They let me, and ended up, they were starting a new team. There was a channel sales job. Your job was to create relationships with title insurance underwriters to kind of create deal flow for the organization. You got tied to revenue. Ended up got hired, had an impact there that, first 10, 11 months. And Scott grabs me, says, all right, what do you want to do next? And next thing you know, I'm an account executive. So been doing it ever since. So it's been an exciting run. And,
Cool. So I'm going to key in on 2 things that I've heard so far. You were selling, or you weren't selling. They sent you over there to convince opium farmers to give up opium farming for some other farming, which I saw when I served over there. How was that? That's been their livelihood. We can kind of equate this back to sales. That's been their livelihood for before America was even America. They were growing that crop. So that had to be pretty tough.
So there are a couple of things there. The great takeaways. One, don't sell a bad product, right? We don't have to live there. They, you talk about, some of these areas in Afghanistan. This isn't Kabul. This is, Marja, where it's like East Texas or, small town Washington State, Forks, Washington, where I'm from, where everybody's kind of in the Taliban. Maybe, they don't do it full time, but and they are. So the idea being that you can find a pivot point, right? And first thing, right, when we evaluate an account and I look at it, account and making an account plan to get in, find out who's who, find out how they eat. How does this organization make their money? What are the impacts? And whether it's, farming, 50 hectares of opium or creating, lead management software, which is, or, Chat GPT or whatever it is, there's, we have to have that understanding of what's going on in that organization. Who does it matter? And then what are the kind of the interlocking relationship structures that are there? And, I took that. That's something that you can apply, and we can apply it here. The other thing being, they might have very, very different priorities and definitely did have different priorities than we have. We can align and not be friends. Someone might be laying an IED outside of the ECP at night.
Yeah.
You can still have a conversation with that person. Hey, maybe they don't do it well. Maybe they let you know. Maybe, if that's their job, you can find a place to pivot and at least align for a little bit. And good enough is kind of good enough when it comes to come to that, that sort of scenario, that sort of situation. I think one thing that veterans have.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just being flexible enough to, find something to work with, find a pivot point, and then use that to, grow the whole beast.
Yeah. So you did something naturally that, I try to help. I get contacted a lot. Hey, Sean, I'm getting out. Think about getting into sales, and it might not be tech sales, but any type of sales. And I just don't know how to take my military experience and translate it. And you literally just did that on the fly without even thinking about it, right? That story. And we all have like all those stories. Like what I say every week on this live is like, for me, I had a hard time translating what I did into sales until later on in my interview, after I've done tons of interviews. And essentially, I just thought if I can go overseas as a Green Beret and convince foreign partner forces and the U.S. State Department and foreign leaders in their countries to do stuff in support of U.S. foreign policy objective, and sometimes their lives are on the line or their families' lives are on the line, and it's dangerous, then I can definitely sell a product, right? So that's once I got in that mindset, I started clicking on interviews, and I'm glad to see for the audience, if you're thinking about getting into sales, if you just check out what Fermin, he just kind of tied one incident of one little mission that he had in the Marines into how, it applies to his sales job now. And the second one that I heard you say during your intro is recruiting, right? So recruiting for the military isn't like recruiting for, the civilian world where you're recruiting to give people jobs. Not only do you got to convince someone to go serve their country, a lot of times you have to talk to their families too, right? It's not just so you're talking to them and their families, because a lot of those kids kind of take their marching orders from their mom and dad at that age. I thought that's kind of interesting. Do you have any? Can you tie that to what you're doing right now?
99% of the SaaS buyers I talk to have some sort of consultant or advisor involved in the process. And maybe they're doing an implementation on their own, or they're doing it outside. They're always going to be outside influences. At the same time, most of us, we aren't so much selling kind of complete out of the box solution, because every team has their own problem. Every team is buying a piece of software for that. So I think the military recruiting is super relevant to what we do. And if you have a background in that, it's fantastic. I wasn't a recruiter. I did for the NROTC program. I'm an OCS guy, but that was kind of my little piece of actual recruiting. But being able to see who's involved, and as a recruiter, if you're not asking, hey, what does mom and dad think about this? That kid is going to flake on you when they're supposed to ship to boot camp, right? So how do we ask hard questions? Hey, Sean, is there a budget for this? Hey, Sean, if we do this, X pricing, is that the last thing before we sign this deal, right? We need to be asking those questions early and often. I think your recruiters, out in the military, they're asking them. And the ones who are doing well, they know how to do it. Fortunately, and hopefully that those career recruiters are training them to get that thing. We very, very similar, just slightly different language.
Yeah, there's so many stories from vets that I've talked to with, I tell people, um, vets get put into like a boxer into one big ball and everybody thinks we're all the same, but there's like 200 and something jobs, just in the Army. And I don't know how many are in the Marine Corps and the Air Force or all that, but there's tons of jobs and people are doing a bunch of different stuff. And it's amazing to me how each job can find a certain thing they did and kind of tie it into, you know, a new, like interviewing for a new sales role or whatnot.
100%. One
Go
thing
ahead.
I'll add there. So knowing your story and being able to tell your story, right? There's a gap there. And people need to rehearse this stuff. And map it out. Make a flow chart and put a box. I was 18 and joined the Army. I was, and this is why I learned. And then I did this, and this is the challenge, and this is what I learned. Write that out, map that out, and then tell your story from that. I'm not very creative. I'm not ever going to be the smartest guy in the room. So you practice, right? You don't go on patrol without rehearsals. Everyone knows that, different units might take contact left slightly differently. But guess what? Having a structure and an SOP and a way you do it, then once you get really, really good at that, when the time comes, you can just start making stuff up and riff from the foundation. So I'd say, that was advice I got was, hey man, be able to tell your story, and then and practice, rehearse it until you know it very well in kind of expressing the message that you're trying to express.
When you were going through your interview processes, did you run into people? Because like right now, I can tell you're super calm. You're a very calm person. You're not like real. You're not loud. You're very steady. You seem super intelligent, and I think a lot of vets get a bad rap. Like, hey, we're all like, we can't think outside the box. We take orders, all this other stuff, which is like the farthest from the truth. Were you running in any of that during your interview process?
Oh, 100%. The feedback I got.
How did you overcome that, by the way? I mean, I know how you did because you are who you are, but did you have any tricks for anybody?
So they did this mock cold call, and I just screwed it up. I'd never done it, like it was just so bad. They gave me their script. Like it was horrible. And so I go in and like Scott Leese is there. Like you've probably seen him on LinkedIn. He's, written books and, and the whole leadership team is there. And, they're like, look, we like you. You're a wild card. You might hate this. And and sometimes you have to kind of slap the table and you got to be able to tell people why you're different, why they should hire you, and it's different from now. Now when I was interviewing with Hi Bob, he conducted it like a sale, right? Do discovery, ask questions. Hey, what's the feedback culture like? Ask about the platform, product gaps, product market fit, all of these things, and then close the sale, right? Hey, based on our conversation, do you have any red flags about me joining the team? Any misgivings, any, thing, ask them for it. And then they'll either tell you no, and you're getting an offer, or they'll tell you yes, and you have something to, you've highlighted that objection. Once you're having this conversation, they think we all charge machine gun fire, or it's not their fault that they don't. Sometimes you have to go through a lot of companies where I was getting rejected for SDR interviews all over the place. So you find the boss who's looking for the type of person, is hiring for can do, not has did. That's one. That's your screening, right? Count prioritization. The other part is know how to, and as fast as possible, explain why it's relevant so you can solve the problem they have. We're going to keep doing that in SaaS sales for the rest of our careers.
What's funny? You said, would you say how or can do, not what?
Can do versus has done.
Yeah. So one interesting thing for the audience, I don't know if you weren't in the military, and I don't even know if this is cross service, but in the Army, we promote off of potential, like future potential, not like what you did in the past, like, your performance. So like people get promoted off of like leadership potential, right? So like that's something that should come natural to someone that's transitioning is like, hey, because you're never going to be able to. I was doing a podcast yesterday with my CEO, and there's a lot of people that have these veteran initiatives in their company. But then when you go to interview, they ask you questions that are unanswerable. Like, hey, name a time you had a quota, or name, have you ever used a CRM? You know, all this stuff, knowing that the person just transitioned out of the military, they never used a CRM and they never held a quota, but they're just asking the same questions because that's what they're required to do, maybe because that's their policy or whatever. And so, like, what I'm an advocate for when I talk to HR leaders is like, hey, if you're going to have a veteran program, then you got to kind of bring someone in like me or you or whoever to kind of go in there and explain, like, hey, you can't ask them the same questions as everybody else because I mean, you can't answer it. Like, I've never used a CRM, and it just like deflates you, because then you leave the interview and like, they're not going to hire me because I don't know how to use Salesforce, which I learned in like 3 minutes, you know, like when I was at my first job. But I think the best piece of advice that you came up with is like, find the companies that are looking for, you know, they don't care about, you know, what you did in the past. I got hired on as an SDR by an Ivy League grad. He was younger than me, but he was a really smart guy. And he was just like, hey, I see potential in you. I don't really care what if you've never been an SDR. And he gave me a shot, and then I was working for him because you know, if somebody gives us a shot, you know, that's just in our DNA. We're going to work harder for that person because, you know, they gave us a shot and they didn't really have to. But I really appreciate that. Was a very good point. As far as preparing, so like, let's say you're 6 months out. I think a lot of vets do a lot of stuff to prepare for getting out that are like a waste of time. And so what do you think the key things, it doesn't have to be just preparing for a sales job, but just preparing to transition, like, so they can hit the ground running when they get out?
I did not find the right people. You know, I didn't know who to follow. I did not, you know, I mean, this is what, 2014? This is not that long ago, but the amount of veteran voices that are talking and that you can get access to, or it's much different than it was, or at least I wasn't listening when I should have been. You know, start having conversations. I do a lot, you know, I mentor on Veterati, and, you know, you find people because you don't know what most of the stuff is. I didn't know what a sales development rep or an account executive, or, you know, the difference between an AM and an AE. And gosh, you know, they're calling them all sorts of different stuff now, just with the way titles are inflating. But you know, find the right people, man. Start networking. And by networking, I mean, you know, and it doesn't have to be all veterans. You know, now it's good to have a chunk of those because they've gone through the same path, but find people who know what they're talking about, and kind of, you know, start filling up your book. The definitions, I remember sitting in, you know, Qualia, and we're onboarding, and I have no idea what any of this shit means. You know, like someone typed out on Slack, which was the first time I used Slack, SFDC. And I'm like, what's SFDC? And they're like, oh, it's Salesforce. They don't want you to confuse it with San Francisco, so they made it salesforce.com. And I'm like, what? I didn't know what, you know, a CRM was. I had someone explain the difference between like UX and UI, and, you know, be humble and have that white belt student mentality. I think, you know, a lot of us, especially for officers, you know, there's very ego driven in the military. So you're enlisted, same thing, right? We're used to authority. We're used to, you know, being in charge. And I think, you know, going in, knowing that we're all boots, and we're hungry and we want to learn, and we're going to do whatever we have to figure that out. Then find the right people, listen to them, and execute.
Yeah, you know what's crazy is like, and I talk about this on every LinkedIn live, is just like, if you want to pick your career, and you're on a sales live, so we're going to talk about sales, but you want to be a salesperson in tech, then you can learn all that stuff that you just talked about not knowing by just trolling around on LinkedIn. You don't even have to comment or make content, right? You can just troll around, and
Yep.
then you can ask. Like, what I recommend is like, don't make content. Like, at first, just go find people and troll around and find the ones you like, and then start asking them questions in the comments, and most people are pretty nice, especially if they're prior vets, right? There's some people that work for sales floors, like you work for a big like that. There's people out there that were vets that want other vets around them because they kind of miss the brotherhood or the sisterhood or whatever. So they're going to help you, right? And then there's people that are going to respect your service that never served, that want to see you get a shot and they want to help you too. So I think LinkedIn's very powerful, and it can get out of control. There's a lot of advice out there that's bad. There's a lot of bad actors, a lot of people trying to get your $50 or whatever. But overall, like if you're going to get into the industry, you got to be able to learn. I mean, it's the same thing as like in the military. Like you got to learn the acronyms, and you got to learn. You just got to learn all the basics, and you can expedite that by like getting on LinkedIn and start following the right people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you, if you're doing the work, it gets easier, right? Be proactive, go out there, talk to people. You nailed it. One thing too. Also, if you only have 300-400, connections, you probably don't have any business posting anyway. That's just to make you feel better. It's like your mom telling you you're handsome. You should be out there engaging if you're trying to build a network, asking the questions for the people who have those. That's going to build your network a lot faster than just willy-nilly posting random observations.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. Adam said everybody should have more vets in their network.
One other thing, John,
go ahead.
we talk about respecting service. I always pull everything. The same reason people buy software, right? I don't work for not-for-profit businesses. There's always a bottom line. The uplift of hiring someone who's a veteran background or has come up tough. I think Coach Prime said it the other day. He's looking for his defensive linemen to come from hard backgrounds. There's a lot of value in that. And it's value for the company where if you don't have to teach someone how to manage showing up to work every day and working hard and being able to execute cleanly off of a process. I mean, that's SOPs, right? Being trainable. There's an HR consultant. Her name's Megan Barrow. She's a great podcast, and she talks about one thing that military does is different from a lot of organizations. Anyone else, military and athletes, we take time to train, right? And you might end up at an organization that isn't big on training its people, but you're going to train yourself. You're going to go find the resources or read the books or spend your own money, or whatever it is to get to that next level.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, what are some stuff that you think vets have a hard time with in this industry? As far as like leadership, HR, battle rhythms, patience, like something like that. Like what do you see a lot of vets like have struggle with when they first get in this industry?
Imposter syndrome. You think you don't belong in the room.
Like what?
Imposter syndrome, right? You come in and there are all these bright people chattering a lot. They speak a different language. They know how to use the systems. It's they're kind of techie. I struggled with that, and I was in there and I'm thinking like, oh my God, I'm older than most of these people. I'm older than my CEO. I'm and I have so much to learn and this sucks and I don't want to do this anymore. And I think imposter syndrome is the number one thing that I see hold people back. And then my CEO,
and it's coming over my phone. Go ahead.
That's, I think that's the hardest part is, kind of convincing yourself that you belong in the room. And once you get over that hump and you do the things. So, when I came in, I thought I had to be this tech guy. And I didn't really hit my stride or start doing it well until I actually fell back on the things that I already knew, right? 11 leadership principles. Hey, know yourself and seek self-improvement. Be tactically proficient. You can know how to navigate a call. You can know how to do discovery and reveal hidden objections or, understand decision-making process. You should also know how to use Salesforce, how to use your your Zoom info or your navigator or whatever it is. And, so great. And I think by falling back on those basic elements that I do as a Marine, right? And okay, I need to make a process. I wake up, I shave, I, do the same things every morning. I have a basic daily routine. I have my battle rhythm. Just convert that. You don't have to make up any new stuff. Territory planning. Most military guys I know and gals are really, really good at territory planning because we sit down, we look at, okay, I need to do, I have 100 accounts. I need to close 11 of them to over exceed my quota. So these are the ones, and this is how we're going to execute for the year. And your plan's inevitably going to get screwed up. So you're going to change it, but you have that foundation so you can go through it. I think fall back on the things that made you successful in the military and execute from there. You don't have to be someone else. If you do that, you can overcome the imposter syndrome. You do belong in the room.
Yeah. You brought up a good point, like with the territory thing. Like when I was at SDR, I approached, my ICP, like I was trying to take down and I know I'm not trying to scare. I approached it like I was mapping out like a terrorist network, and I was trying to take them down, right? So like, it's the same principles, right? So, I just laid it all out and figure out who I needed to talk to, which kind of translates to like, hey, you got to figure out who you need to go target over there to take out, the terrorist networks or whatnot. It's kind of, there's similarities between sales and that type of stuff too.
Also, don't high value target list.
Yeah. We got a question. Hold on, from Brandon. Can you see it up there?
Yeah. So can you talk about red flags with companies and looking for your first XDR role or things to look out for? For example, during the interview process, how many SDRs are hitting their OTE? That's a good one. I'd ask about training. If you're especially new, I want to know, hey, what does training look like? Does it happen often? Is there a training program? Is there a sales enablement program? Is it consistent? I ask about that all the time because, now you're going to continue to upskill and reskill yourself as your career goes along. You need to be leveling up. And promotions. I'd ask how many XDRs were promoted to AE last year, out of how many? Because if there's no career path, I would think about that. There are people who are making sales development or business development a career path now. I think that's awesome. And if that's what they want to do, but for most of us, it's a stepping stone to big AE dollars. And there are some big AE dollars to be made out there. And you got to find an organization that's going to have a pathway for you to get promoted.
Yeah. So that's a good point too. So I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. So in the military, officers and NCOs are always, I don't care if anybody, they could say they're not trying to, but they're always trying to get promoted along this like linear ladder thing. So it's like, I got to make the next rank. I got to make the next rank. And then, so like you get into sales, right? And we'll say you start off as an SDR, and yes, they're making that. There is paths to be like an SDR, an SDR manager, a director of biz dev, and then maybe, a vice president one day or something like that. But that's more like you're going back to being a leader, leading people and all that kind of stuff. But if you're actually getting into sales, the goal is to be an account executive because that's where you're going to make the most commission. That's why you should get into sales, because the harder you work, the more you master your craft, the more money you make. There's no reason to put up with all this drama for a base pay that I could, like, for me, example, I can go get $100,000 project manager job right now and just do that. So like, if you're going to get into sales, you might as well swing for the fences. So, and that's, I think another thing is like my issue is I personally got impatient, as an SDR, and I was like, I need to be an AE tomorrow. And then there's a lot of organizations that are just not going to do it, even if you're good, because like there's a line ahead of you of people they got to keep happy. I don't know. Some of them have like time and service requirements and all this other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if it once again, nice red flag there. What's the average timeline to AE if that's if that's the goal? I mean, that's the other cool thing too is that you don't have to go be a leader, but you can you and you think all of us we put like leadership on our LinkedIn skills when we get out, and it's wrong because leadership is it's a product, right? It's not a skill, right?
Yeah.
It's a result. My personal goal is always to make more money than my boss. And you can do that as an AE, and you can give yourself a raise. And maybe at some point, the leadership bug will bite and, you want to move over, but it's really cool that you don't have to do that route.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the fact is we do this job for money. I grew up very poor and, don't plan to go back to that at any time. I tried it. It sucks. Don't want to do it again. And, this is the only industry where you can, come in and really chart your own path.
Yeah. Hope we answered your question. If anybody else has any questions, throw them out there. We'd love to answer them. So what's your goals? Like, are you just, so since we're on this subject, you just trying to continue to stay an AE and be an individual contributor, or you got eyes on like CRO one day or anything like that?
I don't know that I would want to be a CRO. You got to kind of figure out, depends on where you're at, right? See, the problem is right now I have the best boss. Like he's probably top 3 bosses I've ever had, including the military. Like the guy should have been a colonel. Like he's great. He's just really, really good dude. Knows his stuff. I'm learning a lot from him. I'm continuing to grow, and we're having some success. So you're making some dollars, and when you're in a good spot, you kind of want to stay there and make it while it's good. Long term wise, well, I don't plan to do this when I'm 60, and if at some point there is a leadership role, I think coming out of in the startup world, you take a lot of risks, but eventually, this is my second unicorn that I've been with. That joined at the B and saw it kind of achieve those growths, and we're on a pretty fast trajectory here. You kind of have to go with where the river takes you. Sometimes the important thing is if you're in this business, you're account executive, that you're getting the upside, that you're getting paid.
Yeah. So that's one thing I try to tell people that, and I think this is what scares vets away from sales is, so you have a steady paycheck no matter what. For me, it was 22 years. I knew exactly what it was. I could plan around it, right? And then now you're going into a world where like you're going to get a base pay, but you don't know what your commission is going to be, right? Because like none of these OTs are really real, in my opinion. You can kind of gauge it off what the averages of your actual organization, but that's a big step. So like people and the vets don't like to have that not knowing how much you're going to make, and their families aren't used to it.
You make your base pay.
Yeah.
You make your base pay, and the boat my driver will tell you that everything else is cream. So live live with it, in living within my our means, and my wife works as well. And you budget and live your lifestyle based on that, and then you can have pretty large kind of increments into savings, or occasionally you buy like a center console off of Craigslist that you get a deal on, which is what I did. Salmon season's right around the corner, and you have it. But that's when it's awesome.
I got my center console. It's sitting on my boat lift. I live on the water in Tampa Bay.
I like it. We live on a little lake, but we don't allow boats on it. It's only kayaks and non-motorized. Okay. We live next to a bigger lake. But Yeah, that's the thing. And it's also like there's a certain deal tempo based on the size of deals you're working. Because when you're working SMB and you're just closing a ton of deals, you're gonna be able to see that go up. And then now sometimes it'll be like 2 months, you're like, oh shit, am I getting paid? Oh no.
Yeah.
And then you're like, yeah, we're good. We're good. And
Well, there's again, I always say this, there's two types of vets, right? There's the ones that didn't retire and the ones that retired, right? So like for me, I make a pretty decent amount of money just sitting on the couch at,
yeah,
E9, 22 years. Um, so I can take the risk of a lower base pay on so that's something that the vets can think about. If you're a retiree, you can take the risk on like a more unicorn startup if they're willing to have you with a lower base pay, but but you're getting like more equity and more OTE. Or if you're like a younger person, an SDR base pay is going to be more than they made as like an E4, E5 in Army. So like
65.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, mine was like, my first job was 60, my second one was 40, and then but I was like way higher, it was way transactional, so you're making more, you're getting more meetings, and then my last SDR job was 80, right, and then which is kind of real high on the SDR scale, but I got lucky, I guess, but so it's somewhere in there between like there's certain companies, we all know them, they pay like 30, 40. They blow through people. And then there's other ones that are like more enterprise where you're going to make a little bit more money as an SDR and have less quota. But
I took a 40K pay cut to get into tech. I took a 40K pay cut to get into tech.
Yeah, but it pays off with a commission all day.
Well,
if you're good.
No, even then it sucked. It was like,
oh yeah,
50K base and a 10K commission, was like the OTE. And this, it's a while back.
Your wife was like, "You're crazy."
No, she was cool. I mean, if you're not going to bet on yourself, like if you are just not the type of person that's going to go in and, fuck it, I'm going to be successful. I'm going to do whatever I have to. I'm going to learn whatever I have to. I'm going to, show me a mountain. I'm going to dig a tunnel. I'm going to go around it. I'm going to climb it. That's not you. This is wrong industry for it. That's why, I love seeing veterans come into this industry because they tend to be like that, where, you can take those risks. Because it was like that for 6-7 months, and then it comes up and you get the skills and the money follows. It follows the work.
I don't know, like if you follow my controversial content that I do on LinkedIn all the time, but essentially, kind of, I'm fighting back against. I promote that type of stuff you just talked about because I personally believe I can go into any organization and just with my intelligence and my hard work, just crush people around, not crush people, but I can be at the top of the leaderboard, right? Absolutely. And I believe that in my mind. And then when I believe it, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I don't care how many hours. And that's something that I think we can bring up too. And you probably went through this. I talked to my wife. So say you're married and stuff. And if you're not married, then you got no excuse. Go for it. But I was married with kids. I'm just like, hey, I'm going to have to just kind of not be present for a couple months to prove myself. And then I'm not going to just like flake out on you, but I'm going to work some hours. Right. And then it's going to pay off later on. And she understood. My wife's pretty smart. She's an accountant. But that's kind of, I think because you're behind the power curve, especially if you don't, like you say, you don't even know what SFDC means. It's like you're behind the power curve, so you got to work, right? That's what's going to set you apart, and that's why they're hiring you. That's the attributes, and I think that's a good segue that I ask everybody on this live is like, if hey, in a hypothetical scenario, you're doing me a favor. I'm saying, hey, Fermin, can you go over to this SaaS company over here and explain to them why they should hire vets over like somebody fresh out of college or somebody, doing something somewhere else?
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons. if we're talking about why you should hire veterans as like an entry level, getting in, sorting it out, trainability, um, ability to handle discomfort. This job is painful and you're going to fail a lot and you're going to have setbacks and you're going to look yourself in the mirror and second guess yourself. You're going to make plays and strategies that are good at, you're absolutely going to punt it in the stands. We're professional losers. If you're losing, less than 70% of the time, you're at the top of the board, right?
Yeah, it's just like baseball, right? Like a 300, like
Yeah,
you're
great.
the all-star.
And that's, being trainable. Like, what does it mean to be trainable? It means that you can, take feedback. You aren't afraid to learn from mistakes, that then more importantly, you're able to take those lessons and turn them into actions in the field immediately without having a long uplift. Those are things that you can do, very well. The other thing is, and it's something that I think we kind of leave aside, is, and I do see your content. I want you to know I'm wearing sweatpants right now. Got them at Costco. But there are a lot of really good dudes. I was like good dudes. That's my meter for people, right? My good dude meter. There's some good dudes in the military. That's non-gendered. And the things that make you successful as a soldier or Marine or airman or, sailor are going to carry with you. And a lot of it comes personal integrity is extremely important. You don't make shitty deals. You don't lie to people to get your job done. These are things that, that we hold as
integrity is like my most important thing too, man.
Yep. It's
my leaders. If I have a leader who's lying, I can't stick around.
Yeah. And that isn't to
go ahead.
I think but I can hear you. Okay. You got me?
Yep.
Okay. But I think having that baseline for who am I, right? Who am I as a person? And that's the shore. And it tells me where I am in relative to everywhere else. That's to me is what, is, coming with an ethos. You can use that. That's the foundation. Everything else stems from that, and you're going to be successful.
Yeah. Like, I think like, there's bad apples in every industry, but as a baseline, a vet's going to come with some pretty high character, comparative to the base, in my opinion. But, I'm a vet, so what do I know? Yeah. Yeah. So, anything else you want to share? We got like 2 minutes. I don't know if anything else you want to share off the top of your head. 9 people in here.
9 people.
I can't tell who's here, but somebody. But
yeah, find a doctrine, right? Once again, it doesn't matter, and you're going to talk to people like Gap, Medic, Dance, whatever. It doesn't matter. Have a doctrine from which to stem from. If you have a foundation, if you decide this is the way I do business. Most of my BDRs eventually get a copy from Addicted to the Process by Scott Leese, because that's where I learned first. So I send it to them. So they, you have something. Start with doctrine and then start making shit up when it gets wild.
It didn't. I don't know why it didn't pop up on here, but on the LinkedIn, Shane said, "How long did it take you to make AE?" I think you said you went straight into it, or no, you did something
10, 11 months.
AE, right?
No, I was kind of like a BDR for 10 months.
Okay.
In channel for 10 months, and then AE.
Yeah. So Shane, it was about 10 months. I think that's standard. I was on track, but it just depends on the company. You get in one of those like really highly transactional sales to sales, selling to sales leaders, selling to sales leaders, and you'd be an AE in like 3 months.
Don't. I'll tell people not to dunk on BDR time. There were some gaps in my education from not having the time as a BDR. Made those up. Once again, I'll be, just about 40. You can, not a kid, so kind of can identify and get over those. But BDR is good, honest work, and you get a foundation.
Yeah, because I've heard every good sales leader that I actually follow says like when times are tough as an AE, like you have to fall back on.
I'll prospect any of my BDRs. I think it's the one thing about this business we can control. Look at the economy right now. People are concerned. They're in a holding pattern. They're not buying. They're being tighter on legal and negotiations on pricing. And the one thing that you can control is your output. Are you on the phone? Are you doing the work? Are you doing the basics, calls, emails, prospecting, then getting creative to go past it, get that extra 1%, that extra little thing, you're going to get paid.
Cool. Well, hey, we reached our 45-minute mark. Awesome. I really enjoyed this conversation. I've been following you for a while. Like what I really like about you is you just seem super calm. And, I did a post one time. It's like, hey, if you're like high, like motor, like me, try to find someone that's like surround yourself with people that are calm. And I did that in the military. Like my best commanders as a senior enlisted leader they were calm, and and we worked really well together, like yin and yang. So, hey, but I really appreciate it. He's got some good content. Follow him, and you're a real supporter of veterans, and I know because I've asked you in the past questions. He'll answer your questions and help you out. If you guys have got any questions, like hit him up in his direct messages.
Sean, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Fermin. Have a good night, man.
Hey, you too, brother. Bye.
Yeah, bye.